Good afternoon and a happy new year. I hope you had a lovely festive period and you're keeping well. And welcome to the first edition of Careers in Coffee in 2021 and to kick off season 3. I'm Kieran Buxton, Enterprise Coordinator covering East Norfolk, Broadland and West Norfolk, and I'll be hosting today's episode. Today, our guest is Michelle Gant, who is the founder and director of the Engaging People Company. Michelle will be talking about being authentic and how building self-belief can help in pursuing your ambitions. Welcome to the show, Michelle.
Hi, thanks for inviting me on.
No worries. Thank you for agreeing to be a guest. Firstly, Happy New Year to yourself. And how are you keeping?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Remaining positive. I think, the situation we're in is difficult, but if we can keep positive through it, it will make the experience, hopefully, as well as it can be.
Definitely, I agree on that one. So what I'll do is I'll start off by asking you a few questions, and anyone who's watching, please feel free to add questions into the live chat. So first of all, what is the Engaging People Company and why did you set it up?
So the Engaging People Company I set up coming up to 4 years ago now, and the purpose of it is essentially to make people happy. And that sounds quite trite, but essentially it's about increasing satisfaction, and it's about engaging people, giving people a voice, finding out what they think. It's about communications, being really clear in the communications. It's about well-being as well. I do well-being sessions, resilience, because I think that's at the heart of us, that our happiness is related to our well-being. And I'm also a coach and I facilitate workshops. So it's a whole kind of range of things around engaging people, giving them a voice, listening to them, taking them with us. And if we do that, if we kind of communicate well, we can increase people's satisfaction and sense of well-being. So that's kind of why I set it up. I set it up 4 years ago. The idea kind of came out of the blue. I never really wanted to set up a company before, but I thought, actually, I think I can do it. And I think there's a need for it. And there's also a personal need for it. This is something I want to do. I want to see if I can do this. At the time, I had an 18-month-old at home, and I thought, I think I can do this. So I did it, and it's worked out better than I probably envisaged it would.
Kudos to you. That sounds brilliant. This is a common question I've been asking for the last, since the show started, actually. So how has COVID affected you and your organisation, and has there been any new projects that have developed from it?
Yeah, so in terms of COVID, I mean, when it was sort of first announced, the lockdown back in March, I, like everyone else, was kind of, bamboozled by it. I expected not to really be doing too much. But I think what probably shown is there's a lot of adaptability. I've been able to kind of carry on doing lots of communications. At this time, communications is more important than ever. We need to let people know what's happening. So I've been really fortunate to carry on doing communications work with some fantastic organisations. I've also been able to do my coaching online. Once we've all kind of got to grips with Zoom and Teams, we've been able to do that. But at the start of lockdown, I kind of realised that, I was struggling, and what's always helped me is writing. So I thought I'm going to start writing about this. And then I realised actually it's also an opportunity for us to document this time. So I launched a blog, but rather than me just writing it, I opened it up to everyone else, everyone kind of took a day and wrote about how they were feeling. And it was for two purposes, really. It was about allowing us to kind of process what was going on through writing and to help us with our well-being, but it was also to document what's happening. In the end, 76 of us took part between March and June, and we had 65,000 words at the end, so I turned it into a book. This is the book, and we're now selling it for NHS charities. And I think what that really showed was a really, really dark time when things are really tough. If we can look for positives, if we can look for things to do, good things can come out of it. And it certainly helped me, that kind of process of writing and putting it down, and now where we are with it. So that was something I hadn't expected, and it was something that came out of something that's so dark. And I think, no matter how tough life is, no matter what's going on, things good can always come out of it.
Well, that's amazing. And the fact that you're actually raising it for charity as well and getting so many people involved, a real, positive experience you've made of the situation. If someone wanted to look or purchase the book, where could they look?
It's on Amazon, and it's called When the World Paused, and 100% of profits are going to NHS charities. We've raised just over £500 so far. So it kind of has come full circle in the fact that, it's been a positive experience for those who've taken part, and now it's a positive experience because we're able to give something back to our NHS heroes.
That's amazing. That is brilliant, and thank you for that, Michelle. I'm sure the NHS really appreciate that. What were your experiences prior to becoming the director of your organisation?
So I kind of followed a career path in communications. I started off after university going to become a PR assistant in a housing association, and then I moved on to an agency side. And at one point, I moved away from Norwich to Newcastle, and I worked in communications there before coming back to Norfolk. And I ended up becoming a director of engagement in a housing association in West Norfolk, which was an amazing experience for 7 years. I mean, I looked after communications, HR, and legal departments, and I was also on the leadership team, so I got to make decisions and be part of some really important initiatives. But and that kind of gave me a real passion, a real kind of interest in the whole engagement communications, and it gave me an insight into kind of running an organisation. So, as I said, I kind of didn't expect that I wanted to run a business. It didn't kind of, wasn't something I'd always wanted to do. But I think as I've kind of gone on in my career over 20 plus years, when opportunities have come up, I've sort of taken them, and I've always been open to anything. So when I decided, actually, do you know what, I think I'm going to try something completely different. It was a great organisation I worked for. I was really lucky. I had flexible working. But I just thought, this is what I want to do now. And I think that's the thing for me that I've learned in my career. Take the opportunities, be open, be adaptable, because you never know what's around the corner and what might be the right thing for you. So at that point, 4 years ago for me, the right thing for me was to kind of set up my own company. 10 years ago, the right thing for me was go and become a director of that company. So I've been very fortunate to be offered the opportunities, but it's about taking them as well.
That's brilliant. What a varied experience background, but it sounds really positive and exciting moving forward as well. Um, so one of the themes of today's talk is around being authentic. So how has being authentic helped you, and how could it help other individuals?
So I always used to say there were two versions of me. There was a work Michelle, and then there was a play Michelle, the person I was the rest of the time. And I used to kind of suffer from something called imposter syndrome. So I don't know if anybody is aware of what that is, but it's basically that kind of sense of I don't belong here. So when I was sitting on management team, when I first started my job, my last job, I was quite young by comparison to where I am now. And, I used to think, I don't belong here. I'm going to get found out because I didn't have that self-belief in myself. And so I'd kind of perhaps try and adopt behaviours or try and think about what should I be doing rather than what am I doing. And one of my colleagues said to me, he goes, you know what, Michelle, it's just better when you're being yourself, when you're just being you. And I realised he was right, because what it meant is when I was just being me, when I wasn't worried about this kind of what I should be or who I should be and trying to behave in a way that I thought a director should be or someone on a management team should be, I was actually much more creative, much more solution focused. I was just able to do more, be more effective, be more productive. But it was actually better for my well-being, because you know what? We often think we might have to adopt a different persona or be a different person to fit in. But actually, for me, it was just about, I really just found being myself unlocked me. I am me, and I made authenticity one of the values for my company. So I think it is really hard to be authentic, and particularly I think it can be harder for women. We talk a lot about imposter syndrome for women, but once you kind of realise that actually I am better when I'm being myself, it can really unlock that. And there's a question that I always come back to, and I use it in coaching as well. What would you do if you didn't care what people think? And I'm not thinking about breaking the law, but what would you do? It often stops us being, doing the things we want to do because we adopt this persona. So that's really, I think it can unlock us and unlock our potential so much.
No, that sounds really brilliant, Michelle. And actually, to one of the points you made, we've just got our first question of the year through on the live chat, which links in, because you mentioned a little bit how it can be hard for some people. And the question is, why do you think it can be hard for people to be their authentic self? Sorry.
I think that's a really good question. I think there's so many things that can kind of stop us being just us. There's kind of perhaps, the sort of perceptions we might have grown up with. The comparison's a big thing. I think particularly in this age of kind of social media, we look across and we see somebody, we think, well, they're doing this a certain way, I should. And it can be that kind of confidence in ourselves, that sort of self-belief that I'm perfect as I am. And I always say to people, you are absolutely fantastic just as you are. So I think that kind of, and there's a saying that I often share is comparison is the thief of joy. And I think sometimes it can just stop us being ourselves, because we will look at what everyone's else doing. Just think about you. Think about what matters to you. Think about your values, and that can unlock you. But it's a lot of things in our way. I think potentially when I was kind of growing up, there's stereotypes as well. There's kind of things that might be hung over from, the beliefs that we grow up with, the beliefs that we hold about ourselves. So there's a whole raft of things. So I always bring myself back to, what would I do if I wasn't worried what people think? Well, actually, I'd leave my job and go and set up a business, even though it's kind of, it's probably not the best time when you've got an 18-month-old you need to be, bringing money in the house for. But it was the right thing to do, because, life is just there for living and fulfilling our ambitions. And once we realise that actually, when we are ourselves, we can do anything. And that is the fact. It's only us and the thinking errors are barriers to achieving all the things we want to do.
No, that's brilliant. That's some really good words there, Michelle. I think a lot of people could certainly take that on board. Easy said than done, of course, but you've proven that is definitely possible. Leading on very nicely from sorry, I can't speak today. From being authentic, how has self-belief helped you, and have you always had that self-belief, which I'm guessing you didn't from imposter?
No, I didn't always have that self-belief. I think I often had that thing of, I'm really lucky to be sitting here, or I'm really lucky to have this job. And my husband's always said to me, he goes, you're not lucky, it's about you and what you're capable of. And I think, lots of us that might resonate with lots of us, that kind of sense that I kind of don't deserve it, it's luck. So what kind of really shifted for me was to start celebrating my successes and start recognizing my achievements. And I think, we don't do enough of that. We do all these amazing things and we're just like, yeah, but, well, I could have done it differently. So one of the things that I do each day is I write down 3 good things about the day. But also when I succeed at something, when I do something, I always say, I wonder what else I can do, because I've done that and I wonder what else I can do. And the more I do it, the more I kind of stop and, recognize the successes, recognize the achievements, the more I believe in myself. And actually, it's really powerful once we stop and celebrate our successes. But we're shy about doing it because we think, oh, it's showing off. But actually, we need to recognize all the amazing things we're doing. Even right now, we are living in a pandemic. We're living in a crisis. Just kind of, doing your schoolwork at home, managing to stay at home, just doing these things as an achievement, and we need to celebrate them. But for me, it is, and it's been particularly over the last few years, I always ask myself the question, when I've done something, I think, I wonder what else I can do. And it turns out I can always do something else. I can do something more. And it's really allowed me to kind of grow and grasp onto, ambitions and goals and anything I wanted to do.
That's brilliant. Again, Michelle, certainly a very inspirational start to the year, I have to say, so far. So my next question is which I think is actually a really important question, and I believe you're certainly the right person to answer this as well. How important is it for people to know, but not only know, but also to accept their own personal values as well?
I think it's really important, actually, and I think it's an interesting thing, because I think we focus a lot on the kind of what we do, the task and the results and all that, but we don't focus on who we are. Because actually, once we stop and understand what our values are, it allows us to kind of make decisions in the world. And probably none of us ever stopped and said, well, my personal values are this, this, and this. And a few years ago, I had to stop and think about what my personal values are for my business and for myself. And I thought, actually, what matters to me? And one of them was authenticity. Another one was kindness. Another one was having fun. These are kinds of things that I could then translate into my business. But when we stop and think about our values, we think about what's going to be the fit for us in life. So if we have our values, we can think, well, actually, because kindness matters so much to me, I'm probably not going to work really well in trading in the city, for example. That might be doing them a disservice. But it's kind of when we understand what drives us, because it's all yes, our career is about getting income, but more than that, it's about satisfying those things inside us and our values. So stopping, thinking about what matters to you, what are your values, will also allow you to make decisions about your career, about the things you want to do, the places you want to go, the people you want to spend time with. And it's something that can really unlock you as well, this kind of who am I and what matters to me? Well, kindness, authentic, fun. These are the kind of things that matter to me.
That's brilliant. So I've got another question that's come through. So being a director, why are all the roles of the company important to help create a successful business, and how can we see the value in each role?
So I think, particularly from my experience on a management team, what is really important is we get that different perspective. We get understanding of, if there's an issue, how do we tackle it? What can we do? But we also get those expertise. So my company is quite small. There's not many of us, employed by my company, but I bring in experts. So I know what I'm kind of capable of, but I'll go and use an accountant or I'll use a designer. And also when I'm making decisions, I'll go and, maybe bring in an insight expert. So it's about playing to your strengths, but also it's about getting that perspective, because when you're in your own kind of head, you only have one perspective, but bringing in these different ideas, you start to develop opportunities, other things you can do. And I think what we need to do is recognise those values in each other and recognise what we can each bring to a conversation. And if you're kind of open-minded and able to bring those perspectives, and it really allows your business and your kind of career and everything to flourish.
Brilliant. That's a great question, a great answer. So moving on to the next question that I have. So have you got any tips for individuals, in particular looking at young people here, to raise their self-belief?
Yeah, so I think, it is very difficult. It's a long time since I was classed as a young person, but I think, often you find around you, you are getting pulled in different directions. There's lots of different people around you, lots of different influences. There's lots of scope for comparison, comparing yourself with others, people in your kind of world, but also in the public eye. And you look to them and think, I should be more like that. So, it can actually impact on that belief you have about yourself, that you are just perfect as you are, that you have all the power and all the potential in you. So one of the things I would say is to start, looking at the things that you are doing, to kind of thinking about the positive things that you're doing. So each day, one of the things I do, and I do it, I've done it for years now, is I write down 3 good things from that day. I write one thing I'm grateful for, and I write one thing I'm looking forward to about the next day. And what that does, it gets me into a mindset of kind of celebrating and recognizing my achievements, to building value in myself, to building that self-belief. And I can also go back over it and I can see, all the things that I've done and think, wow, I've done all this. Look at all these great things, 3 things a day. I'm not very good at maths. That's something I will say, but that's a lot of good things over a year. And the more you do that, the more you build that self-belief in you and what you're capable of.
It's brilliant. No, and you can see right there, it's not a question, but on the screen below, thank you for such a positive and inspirational attitude. I think it's a very good message to share. So it just shows how powerful this is. So moving on, the next thing that I've got here is, so I know we spoke a little bit, obviously, originally I was going to ask about were you always certain you want to start your own company, which you've already clarified, no. But what were the key driving factors for you to make that jump, that decision?
I think it was probably a point in my life where I wanted to do something different, and I had kind of felt with my role that I'd fulfilled the things I really wanted to. But to be honest with you, I had much more confidence that I could do it. And I think it was because as I look back over the kind of last sort of period before that, I'd realised all these things I'd achieved, and I thought, do you know what, I can do it. And what often holds us back is this kind of thinking, perhaps the reason, maybe I had always wanted to do it, but perhaps there'd been something inside that said, you can't do that, you can't run a business. But actually, once you start to relieve those, challenge those thinking errors, you'll get this voice in the head that says, you can't do that. I'll say, why not? Yes, I can. There's nothing to stand in my way of doing it. So although it wasn't something I always wanted to do, I got to a point in my life where I thought this is the right thing for me to do. And you know what? I can do it. I can make it work. And I would say to people, I'm going to make it work. I'm going to make it work. And I started it kind of from nothing, a standing point of nothing. And, I'm so fortunate to be where I am, kind of being here, able to talk to you now and have worked with amazing people that I work with. So I think it's just about that adaptability and just being open to it. And it just came for me. That was the right thing for me. And who knows, 10 years from now, who knows what might be the right decision, but I will follow it and I will go with it.
It's quite interesting. Again, you mentioned the word fortunate there, but I have to say I think I disagree with that word after hearing the answers to these questions. So there are more and more young people that are looking to either be self-employed or start up their own company. So just could you give us a brief overview of how you actually started up the company? Because there's not much guidance around it for young people.
No, I mean, I did speak to, I have a lady I've worked with as coach, and she's a friend of mine, and I sort of sat down and spoke to her, and that wasn't to kind of guide me into the decision, but it allowed me to sort of talk about, where I wanted to go. And then the next thing was I came up with the name, and then I got a piece of paper and I wrote down all the things that I could do. And then I wrote down my values, my purpose, which was to make people happy. So that was kind of, this is all the things I can do. Then I thought about, what would be my rates. And then I kind of went and did all the legal stuff. And this is the bit where I wasn't sure what to do. So I actually went to NWES. I've also been to the LEP before to get some advice. So once I kind of got that advice, I did the things like set up a bank account, wrote my website, got someone to design it, wrote the business card. But I think probably one of the really important things I did was I had to give 3 months notice, and I told my boss, it was 4 years ago, almost exactly, I was going to leave and I was going to set up a company. And once I told people, it was kind of like, it was a force in itself, so actually saying these things out loud. I had 3 months to prep. I started to do the groundwork, I started writing blogs, I started to let people know that was what I was doing. And when you tell people that you're going to do something, it actually kind of gives you a bit of momentum. It's the same when I said I was going to turn this into a book, because it's actually a really laborious process. But once I told people I was going to do it, it gave me some momentum. So I think, don't be scared of saying out loud what you want. Don't be scared of saying what your aspirations are. Don't think, what will people think of me? If there's something you want, say it out loud, because what you'll find is you've got all this support around you, and it will give you that momentum to achieve anything that you want.
That's brilliant, really powerful message there, and hopefully, there's some words that people really take on there. So, sort of following on from starting up your own company, would you say there are any particular skills you require to start up your own organisation?
I don't know about skills, because I think the thing is, if there's technical skills, you can get them in. So I'm very clear about what I'm not able to do, accountancy, web design. But I think it's about your kind of, the sort of the beliefs and the behaviours that you have in yourself. So I think you need enthusiasm. I think you need energy. I think you need to be able to kind of to hold the line, so when things get a bit rocky, just kind of hold that line. And I think you need to be open-minded to, how it can grow and how it can develop. And, for me, I'm very open-minded about speaking to different people, making connections. And I think those are really important, probably more than skills. Obviously, you'll need the skill of whatever it is that you're saying you're doing. So if you're going to, become an accountant, you need to be able to do that. But it is about an attitude. I think anybody can set up a company. You could set up a company on Etsy. You can do anything. I was talking to my daughter the other day, and she's 5 and she loves art. And she said, I want to shop. And I said, well, why don't we set up a Art by Fear on Etsy? Anybody can do it if it's kind of that attitude and enthusiasm and energy. You can do it if that's what you want to do.
Brilliant. And how did your previous work experience help you in your business?
So I think probably twofold. Obviously, I've been able to develop my skills over the last 20 plus years in communications engagement. I trained as a coach through my last role, facilitation skills. So I was able to kind of develop those technical skills. But I think probably my last role, being on a management team, being involved in running an organisation, that gave me a really good insight into sort of things like business plans, values. Values was a really important part of that, setting vision, strategic planning. So I think that probably really helped me. And because I thought I can see how that organisation works, I can see how I could apply those things to myself. But I don't think it's something that would necessarily hold anyone back, if you haven't had that previous work experience, because there's lots of people, lots of resources. I imagine the LEP is someone, that can help you to develop a plan. It's about knowing, I think, really important, knowing what your purpose is. What is it that you want to do? And not necessarily about making money, because, I always say money is important, of course it is, but it's got to be more than that. And then thinking, what is it that I can offer the world? What difference am I going to make? What's it going to be? And and then you can get lots of different bits for the bits that you've got the gaps in your experience and knowledge, which is what I do still.
Brilliant. And sort of linking on back from looking at your experiences, what have been some of the highs and lows of your career?
So I think, gosh, there's been so many highs, and I was thinking about this question because everything that I've done, every job and role that I've done has been exactly what I wanted to do at that time. I've got every role that I've ever kind of wanted to be in, and that's been a really high thing for me. I think probably the one low, if you could call it, is I was in an organisation perhaps for a very short period where perhaps the values weren't quite the same. And I think it comes back to the values that are really important. So I think when you think about what organisation, where you want to work, what you want to do, make sure the values align. But generally, every role I've had, at that time I remember thinking I've got the best role in the world. I've got the best job. The last job I had was the best job ever. I couldn't believe it. I was director of engagement. I was so happy and I loved it, and I still loved it. But the point where I was like, now it's time for something else, and now I absolutely love this. I love what I get to do now.
Actually, that's a really thought-provoking point. Actually, it's all good and well looking at a role that you want to do, but it doesn't match your values working for that company. So that's actually a really important life lesson, I think, to take out of that.
Yeah, and I think probably just on that point, a lot of companies recruit around values now, and I used to recruit around values. So I was in charge of that kind of HR recruitment, and it was about our values. So we'd invite people in for interview, and we'd talk to them about what does this value mean to you. So people are looking for that match now.
Brilliant. So looking back at when you were in school, what was school like for you? And also, what was the careers advice like?
I loved my school. I went to Reefham High School, and I had the best time ever, and I had the best time academically, but I also had so much other support. So I think what I really liked about Reefham was, there was for me at that time, there's a lot of focus around the academic, and I particularly loved English. But there was also opportunities to kind of be myself. I think early on they kind of allowed us to access opportunities. So I used to run school discos with another group, and which is something that we were allowed to do. In terms of careers advice, and interestingly, one of the governors of my school was Stephen Fry's dad, and I remember having a mock interview with him. And at the time, I said I'd really like to work in the European Parliament. And the thing that really struck me was that he didn't just say kind of like, oh, well, that's probably not possible. He said, well, actually, I know somebody who's working there, so I'll give you a bit of information about it. So all of a sudden I thought, actually, the things that I really want to do, they're possible. As it was, my career path didn't take me there. But, when people start to believe in you, and the same with my teachers at Reefham, they very much believed in me. So if I said, I want to do this, there wasn't any, well, you should think about here. It's like, yeah, why not? And one of my teachers, I remember at the time I wanted to be a writer, sort of called me a writer. So it's that you grow, you flourish when people believe in you, because then it starts to sow those seeds of self-belief.
Brilliant. And looking back still sort of around the school age, if you had to go and meet 16-year-old Michelle, what advice would you give to yourself?
I'd tell her one of my favourite quotes, and I think it's really apt: believe in yourself and you'll be unstoppable. And that's absolutely true. If you find that self-belief, there's nothing that you can't do, because the only things that are standing in your way are your own thinking errors. The truth is, anything is possible.
I'm so glad you said that quote, because I saw it on your website and I thought it was pretty inspirational.
Did you?
Yes. And so my final question for today, which is something we always ask: what do you love about living and working in Norfolk?
I love it here. I mean, I went away to Newcastle and lived in the northeast for 10 years, and I really enjoyed it there. And when I came home, I had a different appreciation for Norfolk. I love the coast. I love the countryside. I love the big open spaces. I think it's a wonderful place to be. But most of all, the people that I care most about are here. And, that's why I want to be here, because that's what makes it so special. Norfolk people are special, and my family and friends are here, and it's just the greatest thing to do. And I think the other thing is, there's so much opportunity and potential to kind of grow and access opportunity here that is probably not always people always appreciate and understand.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me, Michelle. I don't think we've got any more questions from the live chat, so that does conclude today's show. It's been a real great insight hearing from you and really inspirational, I think, to many people. And it's a great insight, like I say, to being authentic, developing self-belief, but also around your journey and actually how to start up your own organisation. So thank you so much, Michelle, and see you soon.
Thanks very much for having me.
So that's all for today. Thank you to Kaylee Norris for making this all come together behind the scenes. She's done a really ace job behind the scenes. Fortunately, everything's gone quite smoothly today as well, so it's been a nice start to the year. Thanks again to Michelle for joining us. That's a really inspirational, insightful guest. Simply amazing. And thank you all for watching today's show. To help us continually improve and meet the needs of what you want, please don't forget to fill out the survey in the description. Your views and values really matter to us, and we want to hear if there's any other things you'd like to see moving forward. Have a great week and weekend, and don't forget to join us on Tuesday for the next episode of Careers in Coffee. All the best for 2021, and I'll see you soon.